Hey everyone, welcome to IGN's review discussion for The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. I'm Marty Sleva. I reviewed the game for IGN, and I'm joined by Sam Claiborne.
I'm wearing a mask.
He's wearing a Majora mask, and Brian Altano.
I'm wearing a mask of sadness.
I gave the game an 8.7. I thought it was absolutely great. And for a quick snippet of my review, here's my verdict. The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D proves that interesting game design and strong world building never get old. Even 15 years later, it still delivers charming characters, tense resource management, and a world rife with personality. Despite some cumbersome menus and a single drag of a dungeon, Majora's Mask is a great adventure that stands the test of time. For more on The Legend of Zelda, you're already in the right place, IGN.com. So obviously one of the big topics around Majora's Mask is the fact that this is a 15-year-old game that was originally for the Nintendo 64, but now we're playing an updated version on the 3DS. What did you guys think of the changes that were made?
Well, you didn't play it back in the day, right?
No, I did.
You did?
Yeah,
Did you beat it back in the day?
Yes, I did, and I didn't like it.
Too. So we all did.
Yeah, but you didn't like it, because I loved it back in the day.
No, I mean, I tried to love it. I mean, it had everything that I wanted in it from Ocarina of Time in terms of music and art and characters, and the same engine it was running on. And I was fresh off of Ocarina and extremely happy to play something like that. And I found myself sort of like torn apart by the systems, you know, and the timing and trying to get through dungeons with a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
And it turns out that I was probably kind of playing it wrong, and there are right ways to play it, like slowing down the time and making sure that you start a dungeon at the top of the first day, so you have 3 full days to do it. And I'm still not 100% wild about that system, but I understand why people love it, and I do find myself loving it more. And I think that some of the changes they implemented in this version, in terms of like, picking an exact time of day when you want to move to, or getting at least close to it, is a good change. And I know people are mad at it, but there was a lot of standing around and waiting.
Yeah,
and this is a handheld game, so like, let me get to the fun, you know?
Yeah, that change was one of my favorites in the games. The Song of Double Time that lets you go to actually any specific hour in any of the 3 days. Yeah, that made, hey, if you like want to finish off the side quest, but you just don't want to wait around at the end of the third day.
You don't have to dance with the scarecrow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was one of the really smart changes. Obviously, there's the visual changes. I think the game looks fantastic.
Yes.
On 3DS.
You know what's funny about this game is that it takes all of the things that you can visually see in Ocarina of Time. It just makes a different game out of them.
Yeah.
It's totally a game mod.
Yeah.
So like it recycles things that are visible, but nothing else. And it's totally not like Ocarina of Time.
No, absolutely not.
And it's not like any Zelda game.
Yes.
It's not like any other. It's the most un-Zelda game of any Zelda game. There's not an open world that's dangerous to explore.
Yeah.
You know, there's not 8 dungeons. There's only 4.
There's no princess to save.
Really, your goals in this game are like are very side quest oriented.
Yeah,
Everything feels like a side quest. You do a series of side quests to get in your like final day to a dungeon, and then you have to like get through it as fast as possible. You have to start over.
Yeah.
Crazy.
One of the things I felt was weird though is that they move around certain things. They make small tweaks that just they move around characters or they move around where you get specific items.
You mean in the remake?
In the remake, yeah. And there's a hell of a lot of bottles in this one.
There's 7 bottles.
So
they
far.
added an additional bottle.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which is straight. And
but that's great because that makes it almost like a master quest for me.
So yeah, I agree with that.
Halfway there.
Yes, I think it's the halfway there thing. I feel like they went a little bit in making things feel different and sort of throwing you off your game, but not far enough to be like, oh man, this is like a completely different thing. Which I sort of wish they would
Change the boss fights, for instance.
Yeah.
But the bosses are kind of stressful once you get to them, so I can't really appreciate the changes in the boss fights.
Yeah,
Because I want to finish my day.
Yeah.
My favorite change in this game that they made is that there's 5 kids around town, and then the bombers, and they have a note that you have their notebook, right? I even used this the first time I played Majora's Mask, the notebook that keeps track of everybody's time.
Oh, yeah.
When you talk to people, it gets added to your notebook. You can see their schedules. Helps you piece together some puzzles. But this time around, when you talk to bombers, they'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the Sheikah stones.
Yeah.
But this time, when they give you a hint, it shows up in your notebook, and the primary players will get filled in, so you know what's left for you to do.
Yeah.
And so you don't just completely miss something.
For sure.
Like based on a heart piece.
I actually think
or
that was sort of a running theme throughout the game, is that it's easier now.
Yeah.
And not like in the like, you know, your sword is stronger or the enemies are weaker kind of way, but in sort of the way that it's slightly less obtuse.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, okay, because it already still is the most obtuse Zelda game ever made, and it's completely bizarre in many of its systems. But I think that the Bomber Notebook now, how it actually identifies what you need to do and when you screwed something up.
It'll bring up a map.
Yeah.
With the point where that person is at that time.
You can
of
set timers and alarms to be like,
Yeah, I like that.
This is the exact moment the mailman's running by, so you
Yeah,
can
and
meet
so you're
him
like,
right
oh,
here.
yeah, so like an hour before, you're like, oh, I'll walk
Yeah.
there and
And that,
hang
you
out
can
there.
tell that was the intention of that notebook because it was in the original game. I swear, I think I played the entire game twice and really never used it.
That's crazy.
And now I don't know why I didn't use it because I know why because I used a strategy guide.
Yeah,
And
so
by
did I.
the
I went
way,
through.
IGN's strategy guide was always awesome for this game, and it is being remade entirely for this, and it's free
is it
and
in
giant
3D?
and massive and great.
It's not in 3D?
No, it's not in 3D.
It's not in 3D. Yeah, I like the Bomber's Notebook. Again, it's one of those things I wish they would have went a little bit further with it. I felt like the menus were kind of clunky. It gave you information, but the information wasn't super easy to parse through. I found myself actually writing down physical notes, which I usually don't mind in games, but it's weird.
What did you write down specifically?
I was actually writing down specific timelines for like almost like at the beginning of the day, if you make a list of the things you need to do, I would literally write that down. Last thing I want to talk about in terms of the remake remaster. Did you guys play on the new 3DS?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so
The camera nub makes all the difference.
so that's the big change here. What did you guys think of the C stick or second analog
I
stick?
think it's essential.
Yeah.
I think you need it. I think it's so. Wind Waker is the first game to do this.
Yeah.
First Zelda game to do this, where you have a fully rotatable camera. In this game, when you remake it, there's parts of it. I mean, it's a kind of a weird looking game, but there's parts of it that are pretty. And I love being able to like stand at a vista and just kind of rotate my camera and look and take stock, and also like just to track enemies around me.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, I enjoyed it, and I think it's definitely really helpful, especially in very open areas. But I found in some of the tighter, cramped areas, it tended to get stuck sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't think it controls like the sort of typical twin stick sort of 3D game that modern gamers are used to. And that's the sort of push and pull I felt a lot playing Majora's Mask. Is it a 15-year-old game, or is it this brilliant Zelda game that still holds up?
Yeah.
And I feel like some of the updates help that move along, but little things still keep holding it back. And it was the same way I felt with Ocarina of Time, where Grezzo remade it, and still walking up to a sign and hitting a button, you could either read it or chop it in half.
Yep.
And it was little things like that you're just sort of like, okay, well that's an old game design implementation that hasn't really been fixed yet, and it's still there. So I did like.
Did you know you can play the Song of Healing in Majora's Mask to fix that sign?
Oh, really?
Just
I think
fix
couldn't you
signs?
do that in Ocarina as well?
That's really cool.
Well, there's no Song of Healing in Ocarina of Time.
Really? I thought there was a way to fix
It's a
signs.
song of feeling.
There probably is. But
I'm always singing the Song of Feeling.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page that 15 years later, despite some seeing some signs of aging, Majora's Mask has aged incredibly well and is still a great game.
Yep.
So I think we can all agree that Majora's Mask was and still is a super weird game. Between the 72-hour time limit and time mechanics and just the tense nature of, oh God, I have so little time to actually accomplish everything, to the characters in the world that are all just weird. Everyone has these weird problems. Everyone sort of feels slightly off kilter. It's totally different than any other game in the series. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, everybody else is as panicked as I am when I play the game, for one thing, because the world is ending, and I'm trying to get through the days, and get my tasks done, and they're all thinking about the moon crushing them.
Yeah.
So everybody has weird reactions. But you do very strange things in this game. It's almost like a portable Zelda game with, like, Link's
Phantom
Awakening
Hour.
has Kirby in it.
Yeah, yeah.
This game, there's a part where you smell underwear in it, and then there's parts where you give a guy in a toilet a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And there's all kinds of goofiness like that. I think it makes for like a really disconcerting, like almost uncanny world. I like it a lot.
I like that.
Actually, it's weird. I still think Link's Awakening is the weirder game if you put them side by side. But
It has a goat that's in love with a lady in it.
It's true. That's strange. And it's all a dream. It's Majora's Mask is a really well developed and designed world in that there is this weird panic to everything, but you almost don't feel like you're part of it. And that's one thing, I felt like a tourist to this world that was about to end, but none of it really meant anything to me because I had this powerful flute that could make me never worry about problems.
Yeah.
But I did find some of the quirks that are inherent to that game design are they're very odd and they don't always fit. Like there's time traveling in the game, right? But when you time travel back to the first day, you don't keep your bombs and your rupees and your arrows, but you do keep your special weapons.
Yeah, yeah.
Why?
It's just sort of like video games.
It's just a video game quirk, yeah. But there was other things that I didn't like as much, like when you beat the Snow Peak boss, and all the Goron area turns to spring, and all the ice melts. But then you time travel again, it's all snow again.
Yeah.
And to get it to turn back, instead of just putting like a switch at the top of a mountain, you have to beat that boss again.
Yeah.
And I found that to be like a slightly cumbersome game design, but otherwise I really felt like that world building that they're doing really works in terms of the panic and strangeness of it all.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we were talking about it in the office like the other day, and like this game like is sort of melancholy and heartbreaking because every time you are like, well, I'm getting near the end, I better time travel. Like to me, you just sort of you leave this world and go to another one.
Yeah.
And these people all still die. You know, they still get crushed under this moon. And so like the 20th time you enter Termina and you're talking to these people, you're like, you're all ghosts to me. Like
Yeah.
you've all died hundreds of thousands of deaths, and I am just the one trying to zigzag in between and save a version of you guys, but ultimately just save myself. And it feels really strange. And you see how people are dealing with the apocalypse, how the couple just keep dancing and don't care, or how the swordsman in town becomes a coward on the last day and just doesn't want to die. And I like the fact that you're going like man, if you're just playing the 4 dungeons, if you're trying to just mainline this game, you're not getting what's really good about it. You're not getting the side quests of Romani Ranch that's filled with, you know, UFOs and this really weird, cool things. You're not getting the I don't know, the textures of the side characters that really add a lot to this bizarre, like, I don't know, Tim Burton world.
Not only is Hyrule not Hyrule in this game as usual, Link is never Link in this game.
Yeah.
He's very little of the game do you play as Link.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually one of the game's biggest flaws is that first of all, you're stuck in a Deku suit for the first part of the game, the mask, and then you're a Goron for a lot of it and a Zora for a lot of it. I don't like how any of those control, but I like, and then they're used for solving puzzles, and then you're pretty much those characters the entire time you're in dungeons. But it also means that anything I upgrade my Link character to have, including my sword, or you know, like the arrows, which are upgrades in dungeons this time, which is strange. The ice and fire arrow. You just don't get to use them that much. Like I upgraded my sword, I just don't ever. I didn't feel like after that I got to use my sword very much.
Interesting.
Like I don't get invest in Link because you can't invest in his Goron transformation because he can't use anything.
Yeah.
You're just that.
I actually felt like I used Link predominantly, but I did find that switching masks, or especially the sort of higher powered masks, gets really annoying after a while. And it's not even so much that, but even with the real estate of the 3DS bottom screen giving you extra buttons and 2 extra inventory slots, I still felt like it wasn't enough. And especially playing on the new 3DS, there's these 2 buttons on top that no one's using. You know, they're the L2 and R2 shoulder buttons.
Yeah.
And I found that I would have like arrows, hookshot, and bombs, and then I would have the Goron mask and the Zora mask, and I'd still want the bunny hood somewhere because when I switched over to Link, I'm like, I want to run around fast.
That's how you always want to get from point A to point B.
So I mean, I'm sort of in between that because I did appreciate kind of getting upgrades for Link and using them as him, but I actually didn't like the frequency in which you have to switch to the special characters.
Yeah.
There are some dungeons where you have to do a couple different ones at a time. But
I mean, Stone Tower is, you know, it has all 3 for puzzles.
Yeah.
I really like the fact that the 24 masks, like they all, when you wear one of them, they change how you interact with the world. Like if you're a Deku scrub, people are sort of racist towards you.
They are racist.
They're like, hey,
It's
we don't serve your kind, and so you have to pull it off and become a human again.
Likewise, you can pretend to be a Goron and check into the inn.
Yeah.
And she's just like, yeah, all Gorons look alike.
I think one of my favorite things about Majora's Mask is...
And then that Goron has to sleep in the street.
I know, it's messed up.
That's the saddest moment.
But what I do love is there's the guy, and there's 4 of them. There's 4 like sort of guards on the end of each part of the town.
Like, hey kid, you can't get out of here.
And
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you walk by and you're like, I want to get out of here. And he's like, no, you're a child. And he's like, what's that? And you're like, it's a sword. And he's like, oh, well then totally. Go hurt yourself in the field, even worse than I thought you would.
And he says, it was wrong of me to stop you.
It's funny.
It's really cool. It's weird, and it has those sort of weird one-on-one interactions and moments. Like I don't remember what it was like to stay at an inn in any other Zelda game, but I do remember that because it was weird. I don't remember what it's like to leave a town in a Zelda game, but I do remember that. So I feel like despite I think despite its sort of controversial nature, I know around the office we definitely have varying opinions. Some people are like, man, this game's much higher than an 8.7. Other people are like, oh, I think it's a little bit lower. I think we all appreciate the fact that it's bizarre and it's takes a risk, which it's almost like Mario 2, where games don't really do that anymore. Games have a formula and they stick to it, whereas this was like, hey, we could have done Ocarina of Time 2, but let's just do this really weird thing instead. And
and I want to reiterate, I was one of those people in the office that was like, I don't like this game back from the N64, and I've worked at IGN for 6 years, and Majora's Mask comes up almost daily. And I was always like, that's not my favorite, and I don't understand why it's people's favorite. And now that I've actually put substantial time into it again on the 3DS version, and I'm playing it the smart way, I really do appreciate it. I really, really do. And I think it's a great game.
It's a great portable game too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because I actually will set myself up with like I have 15 minutes on the train, and I know in those 15 minutes I can do like 3 or 4 things that are in my little task list.
Yep.
Yeah,
Get through 'em.
absolutely.
Just save if I can't, and I'm just right there in the middle of the second day, and it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. The world's weird, and I think we all appreciate it for that. So one of the biggest things in any Zelda game, obviously, are the dungeons and the bosses. But Majora's Mask handles them a little bit differently, and some people feel a little bit weird about that. There's only 4 major dungeons, and in my opinion, one of them is garbage, and one of them is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
The garbage one being the Great Bay Temple, which I think is even worse than the Ocarina of Time's Water Temple, and the great one being Stone Tower, which uses all 3 masks in unison to have some crazy puzzles. What do you guys think about the 4 dungeon setup?
Well, yeah, I mean, just to your point, the third one is really, really irritating because you have to go. You can only access 50% of it based on a switch system in the very front of it. So if you miss something or have to go back, you have to go all the way back to the beginning and change a bunch of stuff and then go back into the thing. And it's really confusing. You can only go one way through a bunch of areas.
Yeah.
It's just all wrong. Plus, it's like a weird future theme in there. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I found
Fourth one's the
that dungeon borderline nauseating.
Yeah.
Like it was actually, it was just a slog to get through a stage that was predominantly underwater. You almost entirely couldn't play as Link. You had to play as Zora. And
The map doesn't help.
The swim, I didn't feel like the swimming really worked. It wasn't something. They had 15 years to improve that. I don't think they did. And yeah, the map was very cumbersome. And one of my problems with it was there's all these sort of vacuum tunnels that pull you in, and they're one way, and they're guarded by enemies that you have to kill each time. And to do that, you have to use the Zora's projectile, which takes a good 10 seconds to throw in and come back. And it's kind of a pain. But what I did sort of, and maybe this is a pressure I put on myself, but I found myself in playing the dungeons, the way I would do things were I would spend 3 full days unlocking the song, which is basically your key to get into the dungeon and begin with.
Yeah, each of the 4 areas, you have to find the song that unlocks them.
And it's work to do that. It's a lot. I mean, fun work, but it's a lot. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of activities, a lot of fetch quests, a lot of finding things and interacting with people and doing things like that. And you get the song, and that unlocks the door, and then you warp back to the first day, and you slow down time, and now you are ready to attack that dungeon. And I would go into that dungeon, and I would say, this is what I have.
You slow down time.
Yeah, slow down time and go back. I would go to that dungeon and go, okay, here's what I have. I'm bringing some money with me. I'm bringing some items and rupees and other, the
bombs and stuff,
weapons, whatever I got. And then I realized very quickly, I was like, oh, there's a sub-quest in each of these dungeons, and that's to collect 15 fairies.
Yeah.
So you're
I think they're the most well-hidden collectibles in any Zelda game.
Oh, yeah.
They're super hard to find.
They're very smart.
I always come up with 13. That's too short.
Yeah.
2 missing.
Yeah,
I just had to go.
And
look
so
at a guide.
you get this
So
weird.
hard.
That's when I didn't
then.
feel a lot of the tension, but until then, that's when I did.
Yeah.
So I'd be going through a dungeon or a temple, and I'd be trying to find all 15 of them, and then unlock every chest and get through every room. And then I'm looking at the clock, and I'm like, I've got 6 hours left. Before this town is nuked.
And after you beat the first boss, you're like, all these bosses are hard.
Yeah.
They take a long time.
The bosses are tough.
The bosses are hard. They take a long time. So I found myself finding all 15 fairies, beating the boss, and then with 20 minutes left before the apocalypse, finding the great fairy and dumping those fairies off. And then she's like, here's your spin attack. Cool. I'm like, cool, thanks a lot. And I run out and I get the hell out of there as fast as possible.
Honestly, it feels really good doing that. It feels like having that Saved by the Bell just right, a hair's breadth. And being able to go back. And again, you're like, oh man, 10 minutes later, all you guys got hit by a moon.
And Marty had that a lot.
But I got my spin attack.
He didn't know how to slow down time for the first couple of dungeons.
Really?
This is exactly the same thing like Captain Totoro. I didn't know how to run.
To your credit, I mean, I do feel like there's a lot of things in this game that are deliberately obtuse. And I think that finding them is
that thing is well hidden.
Yeah, and I mean, even some of the bosses, and I don't want to spoil things too much, but it took me a minute to figure out how to kill that fish boss.
Yes,
Yeah.
And because they changed the bosses. So
they changed things
even
around
if
a little
everybody
bit.
out there listening right now is like, oh, that one's easy. You just do this and this. You don't. They changed it in this game.
Or even
so I was doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Just because that's what I remembered how to do.
The first boss, who's that witch doctor voodoo psycho guy,
Makes that weird
who's
noise.
just like, he's just yelling at you the entire time. And he repeats it over and over and over. It felt like that is something we let games get away with back in the day all the time. And they don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But that stayed, strangely. But I found it fun to get through that stage. I thought it was the temples they're way, way less of them, which is disappointing, obviously. There's only
Yeah.
4, and one of them sucks.
Yeah.
But the 3 that are there, I think, are really strong, and they're actually really long, too.
Yeah, I love building
Yeah.
the column in the snow
Stone-
one.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah.
one's so
yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah,
then-
yeah, yeah.
We won't spoil what happens in the stone one, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the music is really good.
It's
Nick.
really good in this game.
And you know what makes a big difference? For that temple, that's significant because I think the music in this game is really, really poor compared to Ocarina of Time.
Oh,
I think
really?
Ocarina of
Really?
Time has the best soundtrack out of any game from that generation.
Yeah, I'd agree with
And Koji Kondo partially worked on this game, but there was a second composer on it. And I forget his name right now, but he, I think, probably did most of the stuff. But even the songs you play, like every song is iconic in Ocarina of
Yeah.
Time. From even the 3-note ones like Saria's Song and Zelda's Lullaby that have long versions of each song. They're really pretty, the Minuet of Forest and stuff. They're all great. And in this game, it's like they give you like some permutations or just like, just have them hit these 3 notes.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no song to it.
Which is weird because considering how many songs you have in the game and how like musically focused everything sort
And
of
how
is.
They kept it
frequently you're
musically
playing them.
focused,
Yeah,
'cause you
yeah.
still have the Ocarina of
So
Time.
I felt the same way about that as I did with the masks, where by the 60th time of playing the song, I was like, maybe just give me a hotkey for this.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that defeats the purpose of making me feel like I'm actually playing an Ocarina on
sure.
a video game system. But spoilers, I never felt like that.
But yeah, in the dungeons,
Spoilers, we've never played Ocarina before.
in the dungeon specifically, aside from that one, I think the music is a little irritating, and there's
Yeah.
like
Wow.
bad music in them. And then also, before you transform a world, what the dungeons do is they make the world transformed afterwards. It's
Yeah.
like a pretty nice scene after you beat a dungeon. But before that, they play the same song in every key area. That's really irritating, and I just can't take it. So I'm so excited. I've never done the thing where you go through and just clear all the temples. Have you ever done that? So
Oh,
that the
one
whole
day?
world is nice
Oh,
and
man.
clean.
No.
God, that
and,
seems
pastoral.
super intense.
Yeah, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that.
I want to
like
do that. I don't think there's any achievement from doing that.
No, but it's
I
kind
don't
of like a
mean
boss
achievements,
rush
but
mode
like-
almost.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any. I've done about 60 side quests now,
Yeah.
and I think I have them all done. So I don't think there's anything tied to that.
Yeah.
But that would have been a cool thing to add.
One of the things, going back a little bit, you saying that certain things felt obtuse and like not knowing that you could slow down time. It feels weird to complain about that, considering how much we complain about how like Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword start
so
off
hand-holdy.
so hand-holdy.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't want to fetch goats. Just give me a sword. I want to do something
yeah,
red.
No, I totally agree, but I think there's a middle ground to be found between showing me exactly where something is and designing something that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, that is sort of intuitive enough to figure it out. And this is like this is a really tough discussion to have because it's a sacred cow, right? You're talking about something that was 15 years ago a beloved classic and that people have played top to bottom and left to right and they've understood it and understood the way that it works. So somebody coming in now might be like, that puzzle didn't make any sense.
Well, let me just add that I think that it's the combination of running out of time and difficult puzzles that makes the unique feeling of this game.
Yeah.
That
everything
can
feels
be
tense.
that can be annoying or
Yeah.
unfortunate, but also some people like a lot. So if you give me a lot of fairies to find, they're hard to find, but I got 3 days after school to come home and check that out and figure it out, that's great.
Yeah.
But in this specific instance, I'm just like, I'm running out of time and I can't find these things.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to start completely over. That makes it not fun when I have to start over.
So that moment sucks, but the moment, like Brian was saying, where you actually do get it right in the nick of time is
great.
fantastic.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess in terms of the dungeons and sort of the bosses and the quests, there's less than the rest of the games, but I think their quality is just up to snuff, and it's just sort of a balance of whether or not what you're looking for in a Zelda game.
Yeah, and you can just play this game for Clocktown.
Yeah, exactly.
There's so many puzzles
Yeah.
to solve in Clocktown, and it's a fantastic, moving, real feeling world. Forget
Absolutely.
about the dungeons.
Clocktown, a dungeon in and of itself.
That's right.
So that's what we thought of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D. Thank you guys so much for joining me.
You're welcome, Goro.
Oh, that's really nice, Goro.
Thank you, Martin.
Oh, you guys are kind. For everything else, The Legend of Zelda and spooky masks, you're already in the right place. ign.com.